Hello and welcome to another episode of Off the Ruck with me, John Ferguson. And today it is all about Test 2, the British and Irish Lions versus the Wallabies. And I'm joined by, as kind of a regular co-host now at the moment in this collaboration between Off the Ruck and Scrumbags pod, Lachie Gray. Mr. Lachie, how you doing?
I'm good, mate. It's good to be back. We all kind of lump in and out on tour. It's been a madcap couple of weeks and only 2 games to go. Isn't that incredible? It's gone by in the blink of an eye. But it's on the line, mate. Series on the line, and we've got 2 massive teams to get through.
Yeah, no, it is absolutely crazy. The team drops kind of hit like a ton of bricks in good ways, in bad ways. We've seen lots of big changes. Let's just get into a straight up team preview, what we can expect tactically, and also what we can expect of things that we can't control, like the weather. Let's get straight into it. The Wallabies, obviously, let's go straight to the big names. Will Skelton into the starting side, Rob Valetini into the starting side. And there's another couple of changes. We'll get into those in a second. But we were hearing things that Will Skelton ready to fire and go. We were hearing Rob Valetini was ready to go. But then we heard some conflicting reports, but they're both in the starting squad. How much confidence does that give you, Lachie?
Stacks of confidence. It doesn't need to be said that Valetini's already done all his John Eales meddling for the past 2 years. He's our best player and has been for a significant amount of time. Will Skelton's pedigree is undeniable as well. So 2 massive pieces, not just for their skill set, but because their physicality. It's going to be wet. It's going to be attritional. We know that every second test in Australia through history has been really gritty and ugly, particularly in the first half. So if 2013 is anything to go by, one of the worst test matches I've probably ever sat through, we're expecting something scrappy. And I want 2 big, scary-looking blokes to be crushing it up the middle. So I think Joe Smith, rather, has shown a pretty clear indication of how he's going to play, and he's going to be bruising.
He's clearly seen that there was a lack of physicality, something that you and I kind of chatted off on and off chat groups here and there. There could have been that instance, but we were hoping that the Joe Schmidt systems were going to prevail, and with that way we were going to generate quick ball, even though we were lacking those big ball carriers. But unfortunately, that just didn't come to light, and hence we needed to recall some muscle. Obviously, Rob Valentini was always going to be in the side had he not been injured. Will Skelton, on the other hand, not necessarily a straight-in starter, obviously, because we have had a lot of locks performing quite well throughout Super Rugby Pacific. But now he's recalled them because he's seen that we need that muscle up front, especially what's set to be in a wet affair, as you've already mentioned. Other changes in the pack is the only one, really. Dave Porecki comes in at hooker. I think this is a really astute pick. We'll have those side up for those watching along on YouTube and those listening. You get the sides, get the squad lists up so you can follow along as we go through it. But Dave Porecki, a really true line-out thrower and a great chop tackler. 2 things which Joe Schmidt must rely on during this game, but also 2 aspects of a game that he thinks are crucial, particularly the chop tackle, something that he's a big fan of. What do you see coming out of that selection, particularly there?
I think Dave Porecki is probably the most important piece because the inclusion of Will Skelton hasn't come with a jumping option to replace him on the side. Rob Valetini, while a solid line-out jumper, is not an outstanding one. So much responsibility on Nick Frost as the primary, and now on your chief thrower, who is Porecki. Fazler drops out of the squad entirely, which is a pretty tough call, but Porecki's in there to nail his throws, and that's just about it. Massive responsibility.
Yeah, no, I think it does heap a lot of pressure on Frost as a primary jumper. Great call there. It's interesting because with Skelton, you lose a jumper, but you also gain a very powerful, tall, and strong lifter. So all of a sudden, Fraser McWright, Harry Wilson, 2 people that haven't been used well in the line out in the past 2 games. I mean, not Fraser McWright so much, but Wilson has struggled to be able to get up quickly and in front of his opponent, and he got pinched a couple of times against the Lions. He got pinched a couple of times against the Fijians. So I think that this is for the lack of rotation elsewhere and the inclusion of Rob Valentini, who we know is very explosive. So I think he'll be able to get up off the deck a lot quicker. I'm surprised they didn't use Nick Champion de Crepney as much last week, considering that Joe Schmidt views that as being getting up in the line out quickly being a strength of his game skills. So really surprised at that. I'm hoping they're going to use Rob Valentini a little bit more to be able to change up that picture because Itoje and McCarthy last week, as well as Tygburn, really had Wilson's number. So apt changes, big changes happening there. I think overall, it looks like a really strong pack, and it's obviously a much more experienced pack. Porecki, more experienced than Matt Fezler. Then Skelton, much more experienced than Jeremy Williams, obviously. And then Valentini, tremendously more experienced than Nick Champion de Crepney at test level. So overall, it is a better pack in every way, shape, or form that you look at it. So I think overall, all of a sudden, we start looking like, hey, we actually do have the bigger pack And that is only boding well for us heading into a heavy underfoot fixture, which looks like it's going to be at the MCG. Any final takes on the pack before we move into the backline log?
I guess if you just want to look at the bench cover as well for the forwards, which I
Yeah, yeah, of
found to be
course.
interesting. Williams retained, which is great, but two smaller forwards on the loose season, Gleeson and Tizano. I thought there may have been a space for another line-out option just because of the nature of that starting pack. But like you mentioned, no Nick Champion-Cripney and no Tom Hooper. So they're going to be very, very heavily targeting that line-out space. I'd expect Maro Toja to be all over Nick Frost like a bad rash because he's the key to this entire test for the Wallabies.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. It's definitely not a lot of height. That does force us to struggle a little bit at the line-out option, particularly because you've got someone like James Ryan, who's actually the British and Irish Lions' tallest lock on the bench for them. We'll get into their side in a moment, but if you're looking at matchups, that is a bit of a worry, and I'm glad you pointed it out. It does come with power, and it does come with grunt. Carlo Tizzano showed on the weekend that he is a carrier. That's what he can do now. Like, not necessarily a straight up pilferer like Fraser McReight, 4 turnovers. That's going to be a crucial part of Fraser McReight's game. He's going to have to go back to the well and go again. We're going to need at least another 4 pilfers and turnovers and penalties. But what it does bring along with Williams, it brings a lot of grunt and a lot of low gear leg drive. And I think that we saw last week, if we can capitalize on being able to stay with them in the first half and perhaps even be up, we know that our bench can come off with these exact players because the bench is virtually unchanged, bar the dropout of a couple of players. Then you've got to be confident as a Wallabies supporter that they can stick in this game, particularly that it's going to be heavier underfoot, and these are all powerful ball carriers. So it is a good shout to exclaim there. I think a lot of people will be asking why James Slipper is starting again after we saw that Angus Bellis ball carrying was such a area where the Wallabies really struggled last week. But I do think that the continued success of the Alan Alatoa and James Slipper propping combination needs to be carried on. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. And that is one of the few areas that the Wallabies really had the wood over the British and Irish Lions. Now, this referee may referee the scrum differently. Is it, correct me if I'm wrong, is it Piatti or is it Amasha Kelly? Do you know the referee who's taking care of this one? It's
I'm
one of the
fairly sure
two.
it's Amash Kelly.
Yeah.
But don't quote me on that. We saw him and he was leading. I think he was in the middle for that recent game, the First Nations Pacifica game. So I dare say that's the makeup of the test match they use in that FNP game as a warm up.
Yeah. So I mean, we'll see how he refs the game, but nonetheless, Joe Schmidt can only work with the things that he's got control with, and I think that whilst bringing in the heavy carriers and big ball carriers like Will Skelton and Rob Valentini, I think you can not sacrifice, but you can afford not to have such a great ball carrier in Angus Bell necessarily starting, and then leaving that combination along with the back 3 or like the bench 3 combination in the front row with Pollard, Robertson, and obviously Bell. But there obviously was a lot of temptation from a lot of people wanting Daniel Tupou to be able to give it a shot after his good, strong game in the First Nations and Pacifica game. Not surprised that he's not making it, but that is a consideration, particularly if it's such a heavy game underfoot. But obviously, the one that everyone wants to see in this pack is Lukhan Salakaia-Loto. Quick comment on what he could have brought today, and perhaps what they're missing out on.
I think they're missing out on that grunt work in the engine room. It's really difficult to, I guess, reconcile Salakai Loto not being included. A lot of Queenslanders in particular, waving their own flags over the fact that he has had 3 cracks at the Lions and he's probably come up 3-0 for his personal performances in that. So just his abrasiveness and his ability to disrupt line out and shift people on the carry. He attracts 2 defenders. He creates space, and most importantly, he bends the line, if not breaks it, to push that defense further back on their heels. So maybe he comes into consideration for a third test. He hasn't this time. We'll just have to wait and see. And like we said, so much responsibility on the second rowers there. We see that, I've been banging on about the line out, but the upside, of course, is at scrum. You have Will Skelton on a tight head side behind Alan Alatoa. We were already getting pay up front. That is going to be a huge motor to help drive through what's a pretty established Lions pack.
I'm glad you mentioned that because you've got to talk about the tangibles and the things that they're going to impact. It's not only the ball carry. Obviously, Nick Frost, our tallest lock, alongside Will Skelton, who's one of the best maul, breakers, one of the maul sackers in the world. And I think that's something that we didn't necessarily lose last week, but it was definitely an area where we couldn't exert as much pressure as we usually would. And we saw Lukhan Loto, we saw Darcy Swain absolutely pull the Lions maul apart last on Tuesday night for the First Nations at Pacifica. So definitely an area of the game, another area of the game that we can look to be dominant in. And I think that with this pack that we have, if we're going well at scrum time, we can go well at maul time. And particularly because obviously this side is so cohesive, and the Lions have had to make a few more changes in their pack. So it's going to be interesting. On that change quickly, it's good to see that Farrell's feeling a little bit of pressure by swapping Genge and Porter out. I don't think Genge necessarily played poorly, but Alan Alatoa clearly got the wood over him last week. And if you're looking at what the different kind of players are good at, Genge is a great ball runner, much like Bell, who's also on the pine. And then you've got Porter, is all rounder, but a truly powerful scrummager. So that's, I think, where Andy Farrell is going to with that selection. So that's a nod of the cap to James Slipper and the front row for the Wallabies that started last week. Obviously, that's going to be a change coming around for having Ellis Genge off the pine, a powerful ball runner. Unchanged backline for the Wallabies. Not much to say about selections, obviously, but tactics. Talk to me. Where do you think that this is going to go? Because there is clearly a feeling of we need to get more out of this backline, and that's what Joe Schmidt's gone with. He's trusted them to go again. Probably not happy with how they delivered certain aspects of the game last week. Where can you see them making improvements for this week?
I think they're going to apply the Bob Dwyer and kick it to the shit ass, Virgo. I think it's going to be wet. It's going to be heavy underfoot, and they're going to try and pin them down, put as much pressure on that front line out. So Tom Lyon expect him to kick. Jake Gordon expect him to kick. Potter and Jorgensen will both be plugging corners like Lowe and Freeman did so well for the Lions and trying to pin and keep them down there. If it's going to be gritty and grindy, they want to try and force errors, get Joseph Suaalii into the contest aerially, and with ball in hand when they do attack, they're going to play with more depth. I think they were caught far too shallow, trying to be too intricate, so I expect less passes, more direct lines.
We saw Jake Gordon get one good kick. We saw what a good chase from Max Jorgensen can do. I'm not saying that that's going to be the case every time that they kick well and they kick accurately, but it's definitely an aspect of the game which just was not won or dominant by the Wallabies, and that is a crucial area that they're going to have to nail. And as you say, it's going to be a lot of kicking from 9, a lot of kicking from 10, but what is going to be kind of interesting to see, a lot of people, including the great Michael Hooper, has said that we need old mate Joseph Suaalii on the wing, on the sting, to be able to take those high balls. But I just think that you can roam, you can be in and out, you can run inside, you can run outside. Lenny Kitau mentioned this week, you don't just need to stick on your side like you do in rugby league. So it's going to be really, really crucial that we see Joseph Suaalii maybe shifting out to the wing whilst there's commotion in the midfield, and then going up for that crossfield kick from either Tom Liner or Jake Gordon. How do you reckon we'll see Joseph Suaalii brought into this game?
There's going to be a license to roam, right? We don't want him just sticking around exclusive in the midfield where there is so much attention and congestion on him. I think we've seen a couple of times, both in the Fiji test and in the first Lions test, attempted contestable kicks midfield, but they weren't really in the right place for Suaalii. There were too many bodies in the way, and he didn't get a clean one-on-one contest. I don't think there's anyone in world rugby at the moment that can confidently say they'd beat Suaalii one-on-one every time. I think he's going to create you a 50-50 chance if you can get him a kick in the right contestable areas. So no more of the just weird little midfield chip. They need to be high, and they need to be a little bit wider, so Suaalii can approach back in and create chances on the tap back, or just taking it on the fly like Jorgensen did. I'm excited to see how they try to deploy that, because just the little chips and the half sort of kicking game, it isn't it. They need to be high and short and contestable, or you need to bang those corners and get it out.
What you say about Suaalii is really interesting. Clearly, the kicking needs to be way more accurate. And I think that Tom Liner did on a couple of occasions try that kick over the top. Unfortunately, we got punished by James Lowe receiving it after that and kicking it downfield and really sending us backwards and undoing a lot of our hard work. What I would say about Joseph Suaalii is that he is a combination between Israel Folau and Sonny Bill Williams. Is that he's not as bottom heavy as Israel Folau. He was all legs and run, really powerful runner. whereas Sonny Bill Williams is a bit top heavy, really be able to get through upper body and be able to distribute and offload. That was such a big aspect of the league. His game days in league being brought over to Union. And I just think that this is Joseph Akuso Suaalii, needs to find that balance, because we saw what he did when he stayed upright against England at Twickenham. He was able to offload. Players had to stand off him. They weren't really sure whether, just if I chop tackle him here, is he necessarily going to be, am I going to get the ball in all? Is he going to go down? And so Joseph often tucked the ball and ran straight into contact. And sometimes he kind of stutter stepped, and then tried to go on the outside. I think he just needs to be a little bit clearer in what he's trying to do in each and every occasion. And that sometimes that means like have a little bit of a dance with them and try to take them on the outside, because one-on-one, I back him to take Hugh Jones. I back him to take James Lowe. And that's who he's going to be running up against. I back him to take Tommy Freeman. And if someone like Bundy Aki, who's an extremely good chop tackler, if he goes low on Suaalii, I want him just to be able to stand in that tackle and to be able to distribute and offload, because he's got to use that 196 centimeter frame to be able to be a threat, to be able to attract two defenders. And I think that he's doing all the technical things that you want from a rugby player really well. He's got good ball security. He's got good ball height, carrying height, But I just think it's not using his rare and unique dimensions to the most of their ability. And I just hope that he sees a little bit more space this weekend, and also just backs himself to be able to take a couple of these players on the outside, because after all, he is such a raw and exciting talent. So Joseph needs to get into the game more. Len Ikitau said as much in his press conference this week with Anna Altoa. I am hoping that Len Ikitau is not used as much of a battering ram as he was last week. I think he carried 11 times. It's far too many for a player who's known as Len Flickitau, who does really well when he can get between two defenders. But if he's doing that bashing up the middle, which he's doing admirably great, actually doing one of the best jobs last week to get us over the gain line, I'm just a little bit concerned that he gets too tired to be able to do some of the magical things that he does elsewhere. So I think that midfield combination, if they can get their run, pass, kick distribution right and in the right spaces, they can cause some more headaches, because they really didn't fire a shot really in midfield in any matter of space really last week. How do you see this bleeding into someone like Tom Wright being able to connect with this midfield? Because he was very quiet last week.
Yeah, I'd agree he was quiet in the first half. He certainly found himself, but perhaps a bit too late. So we need to see more of Tom Wright into that first receiver role and into that assisting role that he did so well through Super Rugby Pacific, where he ended up as the second highest try assist layer on. And he was fantastic, really silky pair of hands when he gets involved. So I would love to see him up as first or second receiver a little bit more. And combined with that depth, I think it's important that we create more space for Big Sue. And honestly, not having Tuipulotu in the lineup, which we'll get to in the lines in just a tick, is probably going to elevate Suaalii's game, because very clearly to me, he lost the mental battle. He was trying to pick out Tuipulotu and run over him every time, and Sione just had his number. So without the Scotsman there to shut Suaalii down, I think we're going to see a massive performance from the rookie Wallaby. So much of that is helped by Wright getting a bit more space and a bit more time and creating space for those around him too. So excited to see how they go. I'm interested on your comments very quickly on the 6-2 split and the responsibility now on Tate McDermott and Ben Donaldson. Again, midfield coverage is at a premium, John.
Yeah, midfield coverage is thin. And by that, I mean that only really Harry Potter has played in the centres previously. I think he's played number 13 for Sydney Uni. I think he's had a couple of games there for Leicester Tigers when he was up there in the Northern Hemisphere. So, but if a Len Ikitau goes down, then you're playing Suaalii and Harry Potter in the centres who have never played together before. I'm sure there's contingency planning, but it's different doing it in training compared to doing it on the field in a test match in a do or die moment between the Wallabies and the Lions. So, terrifying prospect really as a Wallaby supporter. You have to be scared for that. We'll touch on that again when we go into the Lions side. Just a quick one before we move on. Tom Liner cannot be the prime ball catcher in the backfield this weekend. Last weekend, he was not even that he did badly. He just shouldn't have to be able to take those balls. And so Tom Wright and whoever is in the backfield needs to be like, all right, mate, like I know that you we have put you here structurally to make sure that you don't have to defend in the front line and get bumped by Aki, which is likely to happen. Like he got bumped by Sione. No shade, they are two absolutely massive and powerful men, but you need Tom Wright catching the ball in the backfield, particularly if he's given space. That's the job of the fullback, and he's such a deadly ball runner. And then if you need to distribute to Tom Liner, who's in the backfield to kick, because he's got a good boot on him, then let that be the case. But he just can't be the primary ball catcher and receiver, because they were able to take Tom Wright out of the game because they kicked to Tom Leiter in the backfield. And we just need that not to be an option. You either kick to Tom Wright or you don't put a contestable up, or you kick to Max Jorgensen or you don't put another kick up. So, yeah, I just hope they've worked around that, because obviously Tom Liner, that takes away from his game watching. It takes away from his time to recuperate after a big, heavy defensive or attacking set. It's just not good for the young bloke who's still very much growing into this starting test match format. Heading over to the Lions now, because I do realize we have to talk about them as well. It is a rearranged pack. Like I mentioned, Porter in for Genge. Ken slips back to the bench. Ollie Chessum comes in for injured Joe McCarthy, who's nursing a foot injury. Tyg Byrne, Tom Curry, and Jack Conan remain unchanged in the back row. What this says to me is, yes, things have to be changed because of injury. Scrum has been changed because I think that Alan Al-Tol really managed to get the wood early over Genge, and that was just something that built into the mind of the referee, Ben O'Keefe, at the time. Apart from that, it is a big pack, and Ollie Chessum is an aggressive bloke. Now, I think that the key players that we're going to have to take out of this contest are, number one, Tyke Furlong. I think Slipper can be able to get, if they change Porter around, I think we can rely on James Slipper to continue to be a solid soldier there in the front row and to be able to take it to Tyke Furlong. And then also we need to take the other Tyke, the two Tyges are the target men, to be able to take him out of the game, Tyg Byrne. We cannot allow him to reach over the ruck like he did last game. He's been kept out of that. He's been banned from doing that in all the other previous games that he's played on tour. But for some reason, the referees allowed him to do it on last Saturday night. That cannot be the same thing. Is that kind of what you're seeing from this pack? Because apart from that, it hasn't really changed. Or are you a little bit more of a keep an eye on the two Tigers, keep an eye on Tom Curry, who had an absolute barnstorming game last game?
But for me, the entire target has to be around Ty Byrne. He absolutely proved me wrong, and I owe him 1,000 apologies, because he played me and Ben O'Keefe like a fiddle last Saturday. The absolute rubbish that he got away with at ruck time sung to me as a terrible sixth grade back rower. And just seeing someone have such mastery at slowing the ball down, both at line out time and the ruck, was exactly what you want from your blind side. He played superbly. So how do you take him out of the contest? Very simple. If he comes and puts his mitts over the ruck again, you send Will Skelton at full pelt from the back fence to clean him out. You take him out of the contest, double team, get under the ribs, make his life hell, because he made the Wallabies hell last week, and you just have to return the favour. You can't stand that. And that's a responsibility that has to be shared by the back row, because Harry Wilson did not have his best Wallabies game by far. Fraser Murray had a couple of steals, but he was also pinged plenty of times too. And Nick Champion, to correct me, is an excellent tackle technician, but he's not the same on-ball threat and clearing threat. So someone needs to take responsibility, saying, I'm taking Ty Byrne out of the game, because he is key to delivering a 2-0 unassailable lead. If he plays that same way, they will win, especially in tough, wet conditions. So they've got to put a target on Burns' back. Curry, it didn't impress me as much as a lot of people gave him credit for. I thought he was more of a bully than an effective player. So I'm interested to see how he's dealt with in this game as well. Jack Conan, for me, was also outstanding. So really interested to see how they go. Ollie Chessum's been superb, but I do agree on your assessment of Tide Furlong as being a potential target. Out wide, John, I'm conscious of time, so I want to rip through this. That change for Tui Pilota's absence, that is by far the biggest omission while injury forced. And then we're seeing a very familiar name coming off the bench in what could be a decisive test.
The absence of Tui Pilota, to what Rugby Pass, where I've seen it there, is reporting to be a hamstring issue. Not sure how bad it is. I don't know if you know how bad it is. But at this stage, we just know that it's a hamstring niggle. And that change actually changes a lot. He's not a distributor like Sione Tuipulotu. He does not have the connection with Hugh Jones and Finn Russell as that Sione did. Obviously, they're all Scotsmen, and he adds a different level of dynamism in the carry, which we've seen on tour. He's so powerful. He is an absolute barnstorming ball runner, but that does limit your options as a backline to be able to bring the ball wider because Hugh Jones is going to be partially kept out of the game for this combination going forward. And I think that this is a really great opportunity for the Wallabies to be able to tackle to target that seam between Bundy Aki and Hugh Jones and put that relationship truly to the test. Both world-class players, but nonetheless, they really do need to go to town on him. Elsewhere, obviously unchanged. They kept the back three. Hugely surprised they did that. I thought that Freeman and Lowe had quite average nights, but again, not sure that Mac Hansen's 100% health. Blair Kinghorn hasn't been overly impressive. Duhan van der Merwe, although I thought that he played better, as not being great. And then obviously, unfortunately, injury to Darcy Graham on the weekend on Tuesday. So they've had to go there. That's where the Wallabies need to target. Again, if they are shaky under the ball, if they're feeling that pressure, kick to them, kick high, kick long, make them become part of the game and put them under pressure, because last week it worked, but we just didn't do it accurately enough, nor I think we did it often enough. So that's where we need to go. Owen Farrell on the bench in the 22 jersey. Talk to me, Lachie. I think this is a move that we probably should have pulled last week, putting Jock in the 22 jersey. Now they've got a genuine 12 color cover and a 10 cover. As well as Kinghorn, it's a strong looking backbench with Mitchell as well.
Very strong looking bench cover. I love the romanticism of the storyline of Farrell being back, but it's not just romantic, it is well earned. I think the two little stints that he's had, first coming off in the AUNZ game as cover and then starting and captaining from 12 in the FNP game, he's solid. He's just solid. He doesn't need to be spectacular. There are enough brilliant individual players in this Lions squad that you don't need Owen Farrell to be the Farrell of 2019. This needs to be the old old dog who knows exactly how to get a team around the park and how to put threes over when it matters. So if we come to a match defining situation, with 3 or 4 minutes on the clock, who better than have Owen Farrell to step up and take that shot as well? So really excited to see how he gets involved. Hopefully he doesn't get involved at all. I'd be much more concerned with him coming on late than almost anyone else. But, again, so many great options in the Lions team. So we're not quite sure how much time he'll have. He does provide that foil as a distributor. You mentioned Sione's connection with Hugh Jones. I dare say that Owen Farrell's got a far better passing game than Bundy, and his ability to potentially stretch and test the Wallabies a little bit wider rather than going the direct channel. I think that could come into play with maybe 15, 20 to go. So really interested to see how and when he is deployed.
Yeah, no, he's going to be crucial for them one way or another. He's going to be part of the storyline, and for us, I hope it's a villain. Although he already is a villain, and I have nothing against him. I don't know why he gets so much stick. I love him as a player. I think he's a tough competitor, and he deserves actually a lot of accolade, a lot of praise from British and Irish Lions fans, and obviously the English fans. And I don't understand that in the slightest. From a bench perspective in the forwards, Jack Morgan, the lone Welshman flying the flag. I'm just happy to see him there. As we mentioned, James Ryan on the bench as well. He had a phenomenal game against the FNP side on Tuesday night. He deserves that spot, well deserved. But Jack Morgan, well done. Finally, a Welshman back in the squad. It didn't feel fully right last week without a Welshman in the British and Irish Lions squad. So I'm happy to see him there. But Lachie, give me your prediction. What are we expecting for the result?
Look, the past two tours in Melbourne, it has been an Australian win. We're going to have to lean there again because simply we want the pod to continue with the Sydney Series decider. So I'm going to call it another gritty game, but I think the Wallabies have the cattle to pull away a little more in this one. I was ambitious last week and a little hopeful. This time I've got that steely determination that you just need to have. So we're going to say Wallabies by 8, and best on ground will be Rob Valetini. What's your pick?
Hey, Melbourne Burn City boy. I love that. Rob Valentini following the footsteps of Rob Leota on Tuesday night. I'm going to say again, Wallabies by 1. It's going to be they have to win, and it is going to be a gritty game, particularly with Farrell on the bench. It's just going to be so close, and they're going to have to take their threes. They're going to have to nail their set pieces, and I think that in the wet, it's going to come down to that little 1-point designer. So that's where I think that will go. Lachie, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. As always, we've whacked this together. We're going to put it out. It's going to be Thursday. get the preview into you. Follow us on all the socials where you get yourselves, get the pods on the pod platforms, YouTube on here. Lachie, go well over the weekend. Hopefully we get the win, and I'll see you for the review later on the week.
Sounds good, mate. Enjoy your Lions rugby.